And with that, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody. Welcome to another edition of the Panthers Shadow. I'm Jack, he's Jake, and it is another victory week here for the Michigan Panthers, back to back. First time since the revival of the USFL, the Panthers can claim they've won back to back games. And Jake, it was a good one. It was a good win.
Yeah, it was a good win. Nasty weather, but I mean that's how you know you have a ball game if you can go in play in that nasty weather and come out with not only a win but a pretty solid win, a convincing win at that.
Yeah, a win where there was no real doubts about it, especially towards the end. Uh, Philly looked like they were floundering. It was a great win for the Panthers. But we'll get to all that later in the game recap, folks. First up, though, some quick news bits of the USFL before we head to the game week. The viewership numbers came out this week, and for the over-the-air games, they were actually pretty fine. Birmingham versus Memphis, 798,000 people tuned in to watch the Stallions trample the Showboats. They didn't get a good show, but at least a lot of people got to see it. Meanwhile, on NBC, New Jersey and Pittsburgh held strong at 725,000 people watching that game on OTA. The cable games, though, I'll admit, do get a little bit ugly. The Philadelphia-Michigan game, obviously the game that our Panthers won, drew just 211,000 viewers. I think that's even fewer than the first Panthers-Stars matchup last year. And then the bottom of the pile, Houston versus New Orleans, drew just a mere 133,000 viewers. The lowest viewership totals of, I think, the modern spring ball era.
Yeah, they were ugly. Average down from the 700 plus K last week to 466,000. So nothing to really boast about. The league certainly didn't. You didn't see any tweets this week talking about how good the numbers were because they were not. I think part of that being just the fact that you're going to have lower viewership on cable versus over the air, but ooh, that was quite the steep drop. I was hoping that we weren't going to see that. That did not turn out to be the case.
Yeah. Although I will say this, there are some caveats to be added there. Obviously, it doesn't get helped by a noon kickoff cable game. It just seems to me that just is not a good maneuver in the long run. Obviously, over the air, noon kickoffs seem to do fine. It doesn't seem to matter when you put on an OTA game; they'll draw a solid 3/4 of viewers. But cable seems to be a lot more finicky with when you place games. A lot more finicky.
Yeah. Hopefully the league gets to learn from that, and we won't see too many repeats of of these numbers. I
Yeah.
think as the season goes along, and who knows, maybe even the league will start flexing some stuff. I know they had flexed a few games last year. I know they were going like just 2 weeks out for the official schedule, but I thought they did that and then still flexed a couple games. So we still have that opportunity to see that this year, and I wonder if they'll do that. Uh, Depending on how things shake out, how teams end up doing.
Yeah, and of course, slightly note to add. The games this week were obviously competing with both the XFL Week 10, which that those games held probably higher importance, and I think they had an ABC game.
Yes.
And of course, they were going up against the NBA playoffs, which are always very solid ratings draws. So while not great, I guess we should have seen this coming since the XFL had a comparable drop off from weeks 1 to 2. And, hopefully things improve this week.
Well, we won't have too many XFL games this week. We just have two, but they do overlap exactly. You have tomorrow night's kickoff. That'll be with, showboats and gamblers versus the Roughnecks and Renegades game. And then, of course, our matchup on Sunday will be directly faced off from the Defenders. Well, actually, they kick off an hour earlier, but we overlap with the Defenders and the Sea Dragons. So it'll be interesting how that shakes out. The last two games, of course, or the other two games won't have any overlap. So hopefully we see some
Yeah.
bump there because there won't be any other XFL games to fill any time slots. And yeah, I think part of it too will be interesting next week when there is that lull that week in between before the XFL championship to see what the appetite for football is like for us now that we won't have that other football competition. So still tons of unknowns yet. So I'm not too worried about the viewership numbers yet.
Yeah, and also something bonus to note for next week's games. Both of the XFL divisional games will be going up against over-the-air USFL games. So while they got ESPN, which is not a bad network by any means for cable, going up against over-the-air Fox games is probably not going to help.
Yeah, that'll definitely be interesting to see how those shake out next week. But like I said, I see brighter days ahead. I'm not too worried, and I guess from the rumblings that I've heard, sources from sources from sources, that you know Fox is happy with the numbers. So as long as they're happy, I really don't care what the numbers are. Just as long as they're enough to keep the powers that be happy.
Yeah.
And I know we have the Motor City meetup next, but I think I want to skip that and talk about the Vegas odds because we'll add all of the lovely game day stuff together.
Yeah. Yeah, so speaking of the Vegas High odds, these actually just came out today. So thankfully for us, we decided to record this episode a day later than usual. Obviously, Birmingham are still the favorites, and their odds actually got better after their clobbering of the Showboats. They're plus 200 to win the whole. Philadelphia, oddly enough, is still second best, but they've dropped down to plus 425. Panthers are now tied with the Generals at plus 500 each to win the title. Followed up shortly behind by the Breakers at plus 550. These are the five teams that apparently Vegas says are the realistic winners, as Memphis is the next one off at plus 1,300. Followed up behind by Houston at plus 1,400. And far adrift and dead last are the Pittsburgh Maulers at plus 2,000.
Now, I'm a little surprised by some of these numbers. I guess maybe not. Maybe it makes sense that Vegas doesn't want to have too many overreactions, but it is a little interesting to see that Philly is still above us. Granted, it's not nearly the same gap between us and Philly as it is Philly and Birmingham at number one. So, I mean, makes sense. I still would like to see us, above Philly, but take care of New Jersey this week, and I think, you know, we'll see that. But I guess at the end of the day, it doesn't really impact the wins and losses. But still, I'd like to see Vegas believe in us a little bit more.
Yeah. And I mean, what I think is more interesting is the fact that Vegas, kind of like the rest of the USFL fan base, kind of has like the soft tiers built in. Where you have like Birmingham's clear cut number one, and then you have that mid pack of Philly, Michigan, New Jersey, New Orleans, and then you have kind of the bottom feeders, the teams that are just kind of adrift from the rest in Memphis, Houston, Pittsburgh. Like these aren't. I don't think these are bad odds. Like at the end of the day, Vegas doesn't decide the championships. They just, they put out what they think will get them the most money in the bets.
And I guess with Philly's offense probably being a little more uh, weathered, like you've seen a little bit more Philly's offense, it's picking up from where they left off last year. So I guess I can see where you'd have a little more faith in Philly still. But after the way that we played these last 2 weeks, even the way that especially the way we played last week against a good opponent in terrible weather, I, you know, I'm still a little salty that they don't have as much faith in us as we do. But they're you know, they're gonna do that, and they'll learn just like they did with my DC Defenders.
well, also coming out earlier this week in the USFL, we have the Player of the Week awards. The Panthers, they did not get offense, but they did get defense. Frank Ginda won Defensive Player of the Week, extending the Panthers' streak on that side now to 2 in a row. And I don't think you can blame them at all for this. Ginda balled out. Obviously the biggest thing that he did had that interception that set us up for the field goal to end the first half. And he's been great these first 2 weeks. Definitely deserving of it.
Yeah, he's picked right up off of where he left off last year. 10 tackles last week. Like you said, that interception. Very much deserved award this week.
Now, the other 2 Offensive Player of the Week this week was Alex Magoo from Birmingham. Magoo, sorry. Now, of course, us Panthers fans were a little bit biased, but it does feel a little weird to not see that Reggie Corbin won Offensive Player of the Week, considering the game he had. Now, I can understand why Magoo won it. He led a team to a blowout, to probably the best offensive performance the USFL's ever seen, apart from the game that we don't talk about from last year. So maybe it's a situation where if Birmingham scored like one less touchdown, then Corbin would have won it. But definitely, I think Corbin, any other week of the year, would have won Offensive Player of the Week with the performance that he had on Sunday.
Yeah, the 11 carries, 131 yards was insane. I think the biggest thing for me is, while I don't know that I would necessarily say that he got robbed, it's just kind of funny. Like, I think just the fact that he called it, that he called his own number and delivered is kind of, deserving of an award. But yeah, any other week, like you said, probably, Corbin takes that, and it's not even close. But Magoo had a hell of a game, so well deserved by him.
Yeah, and again, I'm not like upset about it. You know who's good within like your own kind of world, and he put up what he did. Now, the special teams player of the week actually came from one of the losing sides, and Anthony Ratliff Williams, kick returner for the Houston Gamblers. He had himself a fairly decent game. Got a kick return up to, I think it was the plus 45 for the Gamblers, one of them. And he had a very solid game overall. Even if the Gamblers lost, they still had an overall pretty good performance.
Yeah, no, Ratliff Williams is definitely a bright spot for the Gamblers, so glad to see that he got it. Now, we did have one of our own. He was one of the finalists in Kyle Kramer. So I kind of agree that he may have not deserved it, but still nice to see, and I still of course threw my vote. But speaking of that, I do want to say, well, I mean, I think we need to give more shots out to USFL today, but Angelo over there, he did actually give us the hat trick this week with his Player of the Week awards. Gave it to Corbin, gave it to Ginda, and he did in fact give it to Kramer. So first hat trick, first clean sweep of the USFL Today Player of the Player of the Week awards goes to the Panthers. So had a hell of a week, well deserved, and want to give him a shout out for recognizing. Real recognizes real.
Yeah.
But then, so I was kind of waiting for this information to come out. They did come out with it last year for Birmingham and the whole medical providers and what they were doing with UAB. Now, this year, obviously, individual hubs kind of wondering who was going to be the Panthers. I had a sneaking suspicion that Henry Ford would be the provider, just like they are with the Lions. It made sense. They're the biggest provider in the Detroit area, and you know, kind of Michigan as a whole, but certainly in the Detroit area, made perfect sense. So that information did come out that they have Henry Ford Health as the Panthers medical.
Yeah, good on them.
Eh,
Yeah, biggest hospital system in the area. Employ many of people. Help keep the podcast afloat. Even some would say indirectly.
Indirectly, very much so. Yes, pays for my ability to pay for the electric. So yeah,
Yeah,
and
and it pays for your addiction to buying Panthers gear.
yeah, which I'm going to have to do. I'm going to raid the store on Sunday. So yeah, Detroit and the Panthers can certainly thank Henry Ford in more than one way.
Yeah,
And then one great thing that I absolutely loved seeing this week was the guy who did not know that I was going to be upset about not seeing at the hub announcement. They did finally manage to get Charles Woodson to come up to Michigan and talk with the team. So there's a little clip of his speech to the team this week. He had then met up with Big E. So thrilled to see that they're trying to incorporate some Michigan legends. Of course, obviously Woodson being Hall of Famer and Heisman Trophy winner and national champion for our Michigan Wolverines. So great, super excited to see him involved there. And yeah, I like that they're bringing in all of these names. And speaking of that, they're doing something else, kind of connecting with the past here,
yeah.
aren't they?
Well, yeah, more directly linked to the Panthers, and also wearing a cool helmet. The Cajun Cannon himself, the original starting quarterback for the Michigan Panthers, Bobby Hebert, coming back home, as it were, to help welcome the Panthers back to Ford Field on Sunday. Hebert, for those of you who may not be so well versed on your USFL history, was the starting quarterback for the Michigan Panthers during their 2 years in the USFL, and then once the Panthers merged with the Oakland Invaders, he ended up winning out the starting job out in Oakland. So he is a through and through USFL. Ended up playing a solid 10-year career in the NFL after that for the Saints and the Falcons. And honestly, it's really cool that he's coming back and that he's willing to support the team. He even was interviewing. He announced this actually by interviewing Mike Nolan on his radio show down in the New Orleans area.
Yeah, this is just yet another example of the USFL getting to incorporate the past with the present. And it was kind of something they were hoping, that we were wondering. I think you even said it like, hey, do we get A-Bear? Do we get AC? Do we get Novo? Do we bring them in, incorporate them into the games? And there's your answer. Yeah, we get to see A-Bear at the game on Sunday. And that's a hell of a way to connect the nostalgia of the 80s, because as we've heard, it sounds like Detroit is really embracing, like, the nostalgia is real. The nostalgia factor, especially in Detroit, is real, and it's great to be able to see that and have that realized with connecting the past to the present with an all-time, favorite, with the 1983 USFL championship MVP Bobby Hebert.
Yeah, and he even said on his radio show something along the lines of, they don't care where you come from in Michigan. If you can bring them a winner, they'll love you for life. And his original nickname, the Cajun Cannon, which, by the way, possibly the underrated nickname in pro football history. That is such a cool nickname. Came from his time with the Panthers. That's where he got his nickname, the Cajun Cannon. So it's something that's lasted with him, for forever and a day. And so, him coming back, it's great to see him, back here again.
Yeah, and just to reemphasize the league wanting to embrace the passes, it's not even just like he is coming and then they're allowing him to come on and incorporate that. They're paying for him to travel to Michigan, so they are
Yeah.
invested in this, and it's great. It's fantastic. I absolutely love it.
Yeah, and I mean, again, they've already done a bunch of historical stuff. Showed old Jim Kelly highlights, even in the pregame. I don't know if you remember seeing this for the Stars and Panthers game. They did like that little graphic thing where they showed the old logos of the teams, and then they kind of smash cut them to the new logos, which I thought was so cool.
Yeah, it's like I said, it's one of the cool things that we've really got to realize this year, and now the fact that it's really ramping up, I kind of am curious as we'll see what they're going to do going forward, but thrilled about it.
Yeah. Meanwhile, though, if you're gonna be there and you haven't gotten your tickets yet, which I don't know, if you haven't gotten your tickets yet, I don't know what you're doing because they are running low if you want to be on the sideline. But the plus side, though, is that if you're looking for a cheap way in, they've opened up the end zone. Both the east and the west end zones are now open for general admission tickets. Each of them are going to cost you about $10 each to get in. You can sit anywhere in the end zones. Um, it helps pack out Ford Field even more since it seems that as things are going right now, Jake, they're selling tickets faster than they can come up with tickets.
Yeah, from what I know, they are definitely running out of of tickets available, which obviously you've seen is that's why they're opening up the end zones. I mean, part of it, I'll say that I think it's probably some of it is marketing, kind of the whole scarcity effect. But as what I found out, they were selling some tons of tickets this week. There were a few days where I think they gained 50% of their previous sales in just one day of what they've had previously for the entire thing. So yeah, it's going to be a crazy crowd. We are coming out. Detroit is coming out to support this team. Love to see it. And yeah, I mean, I'm going to put this episode up tonight on, we're recording it Friday, so you better hurry. You're going to have
Yeah,
48 hours to get your tickets and actually less than that cuz the game's at 4. So yeah, get your tickets cuz it's going to be crazy.
yeah,
It's going to be insane. I mean, you got some of these USFL guys coming up because they know it's going to be insane. If you listen to the USFL podcast earlier, the entire or one of the real reasons why Motor City Meetup is actually going to happen is because the head of tickets told Zach and Ref that no, Detroit's going to be crazy. You really need to make sure you go, and so that's why Motor City Meetup is actually going to be a thing for sure. Is because of that. So yeah. Detroit's gonna show up
yeah,
and show out. This is going to be insane, and we'll probably be able to wax a little more poetic with it, in what we think what's gonna go on in our preview. But yeah, super excited. When I got that news that the end zone was gonna be, put out, I was excited. I'm stoked, and I'm still thrilled. But speaking of Motor City Meetup, that's happening. We've tweeted about it. You should have seen it if you're following us on Twitter, which you, of course, should be. It's going to actually probably be bigger than I think what Ref and Zach imagined it to be. Because, of course, we got involved and Warrior House, and even some of the players were retweeting and sharing the information about our pregame and Motor City meetup. So, Brass Rail will probably be packed. Hopefully so. I really want to see
oh
a
yeah,
good turnout. Again, I know, you know, both of USFL podcast, Zach and Ruff will be there. You and I will be there. The guys from Warrior House will be there. And then, we've got the word out to a bunch of other people with pregame. Like I said, it got shared and liked a lot. So I'm thinking that there's, pretty decent turnout we can expect. And that's going to be going on between 1 and 3. I prime myself probably aiming for a little before 1, knowing traffic and that I might end up a little after that. But either way, I'll be there for pretty much the bulk of it. Get, some food, hopefully, and, a drink or two in before we head on out to the game.
Yeah, because the great thing about Brass Rail is that it's pretty much within walking distance of Ford Field. I think it's only about 2 blocks away.
Yeah, it
So
is like a block away from Comerica, and then which of course Comerica is right across the street from Ford.
Yeah, so it's even if you're just going to Ford Field and you just plan on making that your day, it doesn't hurt to come around. Wherever you're going to end up parking, you're probably going to end up parking right next to Brass Rail anyway. So,
Yeah, there's a lot of
come
parking
swing by. Come swing by. It'll be a great time. We're going to all have, fun, grab a little, we're all going to be meeting each other, probably grabbing again a bite to eat, something to drink before we all march down like a massive hive mind to Ford Field.
Yeah. Speaking of, though, if you do plan on watching the Stars game, you're not going to be able to join us in the Motor City meetup and get back into the game for the Panthers because there is no re-entry with these tickets. It's just one ticket for both games. You're not going to be able to, like I said, get back in if without another ticket. So if you're going to go see the Stars game, great, cool. It's more football. I don't blame you, but unfortunately, we're not going to be able to see you. So heads up there. Do not expect to be able to go there. You watch the game, head to Motor City meetup, and then head back over. Not going to happen. And then, but if you are also going to go see the Stars game, and you don't plan on going and meeting up with us at Motor City meetup, gates open at 11 a.m. to obviously through the Panthers game. So starting at 11, 60 minutes before the first game, gates open. So if you plan on going in and seeing both games, you will be able to do that. Like I said, start entering the stadium at 11. Now on to what we can kind of expect from from our roster this week. We are one of the few teams that did not make any roster moves at all. Nobody was released. Nobody was signed. At least nothing that has been reported yet, which I think is actually kind of a good thing. It shows to me that Nolan is happy with the staff with the roster that he has. He's sticking with it. And it makes sense to me. Again, as I've said numerous times, I love our roster and glad to see that there hasn't been any real changes to that. Now, I'm not expecting a depth chart. Looks like the information that that I got the depth chart on week 1 was not supposed to go out, so I don't anticipate getting out the depth chart. So we don't know what we're looking at going into Sunday. Unfortunately, yet again, probably more of the same. I don't know of any new injuries that hasn't come out yet, so I don't think that's going to really impact anything. But unless players were injured during practice, we should be pretty much looking at the same thing that we have for the last week. So what will be interesting though is to see if we see our new signees in rookie Central Latham or our free agent signing last week in Tyree Robinson, if they will crack the active roster. That I'm waiting to see. Hopefully we get that information here shortly from the Panthers Twitter. So we'll be watching that. But at least as we're recording it, we don't have that information. So we're really curious to see if anything changes and if those guys end up on the active roster or not. And then our guy that I have been hoping and wanting to see, that I think we both pegged as a week 1 starter, didn't happen. But last week, Delano Hill was activated to the active roster last week. I don't know if he saw the field. I didn't see his name get called. I was watching for him a little bit. At least when I didn't see his number, so not entirely sure if he was on there, and I didn't actually look to see if he recorded any stats. So don't know that for sure, but hopefully we get to see more of him, especially now that we're going to actually be in Ford Field, in Detroit, in Michigan, but we'll see. Other than that, I don't really have anything to add for roster stuff. Any concerns or questions there? How about you?
No, same here. Like not much of a concern. If and hey, that's kind of the approach that Mike Nolan seems to be wanting is that if your team's fine, if you got the guy you want, why fiddle with it? It's the
Ain't
classic
broke, don't fix
motto.
it.
If it ain't broke, don't fix it. There's no reason to. Nothing's broken. So why try fixing anything?
I mean, 2-0 with
Yeah,
double, with 2-score wins in both games. So yeah, don't mess with the good
yeah,
thing. We're dominant on both sides of the ball. Yeah, I'm glad that he's not trying to fiddle and that he's trying to manipulate something that's working. That is, I think, a classic blunder that he's not making, and that just makes me love him even more.
yeah. And again, when you are not even in a situation where even like a desperation move would be needed, that's fine. 2-0. We've won as many games in 2 weeks as we did all last year, so nothing to complain about.
No, and speaking of that, let's talk about last week. I was nervous coming into this game, but I guess we'll get into our takeaways in a minute. But super happy. I'm not surprised by the result, but I am so happy by the result. But obviously, by hearing us talk, you should know by now, especially because you've watched the game, right? You watched the game and you saw
Yeah,
Michigan just control the whole entire game, beat Philly 24-10, and Josh Love, as far as stats go, didn't look fantastic. We'll get more into that in a minute, but 15 of 30 for one touchdown and two interceptions. So, kind of a stark contrast, at least the stats go, from his week one performance. Reggie, however, complete 180, where Stevie Scott took over and controlled week one on the run game. He called his own number, yelled at the offensive coaching staff on the phone, and they listened, they agreed, and man ran for 11 rushes, 131 yards for two touchdowns, including, I believe, to date, still the longest touchdown run of the season. In fact, maybe even the longest run of the season so far. Granted, only through 2 weeks, but still, Reggie and his long touchdown runs, kind of a theme.
yeah,
Defense, once again, absolutely stout. 4 sacks, 4 tackles for loss, 2 interceptions, and 2 forced fumbles that we recovered both of. So again, another just brilliant 4 turnover performance by our defense. They continue to impress. Cole Murphy kind of turning it around this week. He did miss his first field goal attempt, but he ended up ended the night for 1 for 2 for field goal, and he notched all of his PATs. So definitely improvement from the 50% in PAT from week one. Time of possession, nothing too special. Kind of pretty similar to last week. Michigan with a little over 28 minutes of time of possession. Philly a little under 32. Uh, Kind of even throughout the games, both teams turned it over. So both were kind of had to chip away. No real huge plays. So time of possession doesn't surprise me there. Red zone, we were 1 of 1. But I think probably the more important stat for at least us in defensive is that they were 1 of 4 uh, in the red zone. They did get a field goal out of uh, another one though, but that we completely stoned them on scoring, stopped them from scoring on 2 of them. So again, not surprising with the way our defense is playing. And then we are +5 in turnover margin on the year, which is again continues to lead the league. We have 8 takeaways on the year, 4 from last week and 4 from week 1. And then we did kind of give back a little bit this week with 2 interceptions, but we'll talk a little bit more about those pretty much right now. So what were your thoughts on the game? You start us off.
Yeah, so honestly, I mean, it was a good game on the whole for the Panthers. I wouldn't say it was quite as good as the Gamblers' performance. That's to be expected. We went up against a better overall team than the Gamblers, so it was pretty good. Some of the main things that I noticed, there were some moments in the first half where the O-line play still looked shaky. Especially when they were just blocking the wrong guy at times. Like, I think I remember one play where I saw I think it was one of our guards, was standing there, right? Had a guy coming directly at him, and then another guy who was kind of already taken by the tackle. He turned to the guy who was taken by the tackle, right? Now, I don't expect perfect decision making all the time, but there are times like that where it's like, okay, there is an obvious greater threat here. You need to go after that. But on the whole, especially once they got their flow going, the offensive line was wasn't a hindrance, which really for an offensive line is all you can ask for. The other main thing I noticed, and I remember it was probably my biggest worry last week, was how is our pass defense going to handle Philly? And I'll say we did a very fine job at handling Philly. Only one deep pass allowed, and it was the first pass they attempted all night. After that, we smothered them on pass defense. The man-to-man coverage that Steve Brown and Mike Nolan are drawing up, it's working like a charm. Because Philly could not get anything going on the deeper passes, and even on the shallower stuff, it was harder to do. And even just getting the ball out was hard because Case Cookis was getting rattled every other play to the point where I honestly think towards the end, it may not have been a good idea to keep Case Cookis in. I'm going to be honest, for Philly.
Yeah, for the league, Case was one of the success stories of last year, and it would behoove the USFL, in my opinion, to keep him healthy. So the decision to keep him in was probably not the smartest way to go. One,
Yeah.
just for his health, like you don't want to see players get injured. And two is as important as he is to the league and to that offense. You'd think that they would try to keep him upright and you know healthier, but clearly that's not the way they went. They were going for the win, so I get it. But yeah, I agree with you. He probably shouldn't have been kept in for as long as he was.
Yeah, because I remember after, I think it was, I don't remember if it was Speaks or Marino who did it, where, like, they kind of force stopped his arm in the middle of, like, the throwing motion. You could tell, like, he was in pain after that. Um,
Yeah,
again,
that was the first blow.
I can understand from Bart Andrus' standpoint why you'd keep him in, because he's clearly your best guy, and I think their backup was, I think, Kyle Laletta, if I'm not mistaken.
I thought
Um,
Loletta was with New Jersey to start, but I'm fortunately I'm not quite as up to the knowledge of all of our opponents, our North opponents. At least their
yeah,
backups. Their starters I'm a little more aware of.
yeah. Oh, well, their backup would have been Vadley, which not a bad backup
Yeah.
still.
No, not at all.
Um, yeah, it's just I don't know. Just on the whole, though, the Panthers' defense, we made Philly look like nothing. The only time Philly really scored were on that big cross field play to the opposite 20, and then that one turnover from Josh Love that set him up at like the 35. Those are the only two times they scored, and it's when we damn near gave them the points.
Yeah, no, I absolutely loved our defensive performance. Like they are good- dominant. I think you could easily make the argument that we are the best defense. Now, I'll go off on a little tangent because I've, as you saw, I've had an argument this week as far as us versus the Stallions in the defense, and yeah, I'll give it to the Stallions that they've allowed fewer points than we have, but their offenses that they've played have not been fantastic offenses. And granted, we'll be able to kind of prove that point. My point, we'll be able to defend that this weekend against one of those offenses that these Stallions played early this year. But I haven't been super. Well, I've been super impressed with their defense. Like I want to give them plenty of credit because they have absolutely deserved it. I mean, they pitched a shutout this last week. It was just the offense that they gave up the 2 points, but I still think that we have the dominant defense, or the most dominant, the best defense in the USFL so far through 2 weeks, and I'm convinced of that.
Yeah. And you have to always consider that even though we have more points, you think about it like this. We've only let up about 9 points from what I would consider as like at length,
Yeah,
right? So you think about it as because for the Gamblers, their second touchdown came from when they started at like the 25. And
yep,
then for the Stars, they started their drive at like the 35. So for them, scoring was almost inevitable. Meanwhile, again, if a team started from behind their own 50, they may as well punt it with the way that our defense is playing, considering that, again, through 2 games, we've only let up 9 points at length.
yeah. I mean, even that first drive that Philly had, where I was just like, "Oh, great, here we go. He's going to carve up our secondary." I kind of got a little bit of pessimism in me, but then once they got to the red zone, we stonewalled them and forced them to punt after that beautiful sack on third down. So we stepped up, our defense stepped up, and that wasn't something that I was skeptical of happening, I guess. Even in my pessimism, I was just like, all right, great. We're gonna have to play from behind. But I knew that we were gonna make adjustments and get that figured out. But still, that was something I was initially worried about. Obviously, at the end of the day, nothing that we couldn't overcome the 3 points we obviously did. So
Yeah. Now, something I will say is we talked about this a little bit earlier, how we only have 3 giveaways so far. We have few turnovers, but man, do we not have a tendency of when we do turn the ball over to have it be like the most devastatingly suboptimal situation?
well, like you said, that one return by Dennis to the 35 last week that led to the touchdown, that was less than optimal. And then that one fumble with the muffed punt in week 1 that led to their second and final touchdown for the Gamblers. Yeah, like you said, our turnovers have been at fairly costly times. Would like to see that that stopped. I would like to not see that going forward.
Yeah. Again, we don't give the ball away often.
No,
It's just I would like it to, if we do give the ball away, that it's not that it isn't devastating.
I'd rather them be arm punts on like third down, and so that they intercept the ball, back
Yeah.
to 5 or 10 or whatever. So it's like a punt, rather not them be able to return the stuff to deep into our territory. So would like to see some of that, but I mean, I'd like to see some of that stop. But I mean, I don't know. I guess I'm not too concerned, at least with like the second interception, the one that got returned back to our 35, was because our receiver slipped. Sims slipped, and
Yeah.
I don't know if he would have caught it, but I think that he would have at least been able to get in front of it and the very least make sure that Dennis didn't intercept it. So that I wish that I'm sure Love wish he had both of the interceptions back though. The first one, again, interestingly enough, was also targeted towards Sims. Not sure if it just was that Sims couldn't get back to the ball because of the weather, but Dennis was able to step in front of the ball and pick that one off. So that one was, of course, timely because we were driving, and that just killed that drive. I don't believe, obviously, that one didn't end in points for Philly, but it might as well have, at least in terms of it, stopped us from scoring, which I feel like we were at least going to get 3 out of that drive.
Yeah.
Now, I know people, well, I guess I shouldn't say that. I think most people know and agree with us that Love actually still had a really good day despite his drops. So if you look at his stats, or despite his stats, if you look at his stats on the day, again, the whole 15 of 30 looks awful, especially coming down from the 90% completion percentage that he had on week 1, which is just absolutely insane. So coming down a little bit would be expected, but his numbers certainly were not aided by his receivers at all on Sunday. And I mean, the weather, this is blankly, the weather was terrible. Kukas obviously was able to have better numbers in the same weather, so it's not entirely unthinkable that like, oh, we can just excuse our performance on offense. But I mean, at the end of the day, we still did what we needed. So I'm still very happy with our
Yeah.
offense. I still am very confident in our offense, especially in this next 4 weeks where we're playing in a dome. So there will be zero weather. There will be no wind. There will be no rain. There will be no
Yeah.
snow. If it does happen, then there's some major problems, and Ford and the Lions have a huge bill on their hands if
Yeah.
we get the weather to start impacting any of the next 4 weeks. So,
Yeah.
uh,
It'll definitely be helpful since apparently the weather forecast is calling for a little drizzle on Sunday.
dude, it's Michigan in the spring. Like, I'm
Yeah.
gonna go on a tangent because I'm so glad I got my yard work done yesterday because it is raining today, raining tomorrow, raining Sunday, raining Monday, raining Tuesday, and I think my forecast here is no rain on Wednesday. So, uh, yeah, Michigan weather. So super glad. Again, another reason why I'm so happy that we actually chose they got Ford Field instead of Ryan Nearson. As much as I would have liked a little closer of a drive, having the ability to ignore Michigan weather at this time of year has been fantastic. So, yeah, I don't expect that our drops issue due to the weather are going to be a concern for the rest of the year. Really, certainly not not for the next 4 weeks. So that'll be nice. But yeah, Joe Walker did not have his day. 6 drops. He had 8 targets and 2 catches, and the 6 that he didn't catch were catchable. Like he should have been able
Yeah.
to bring those in. Granted, the weather, I'm not going to shame him. He obviously balled out week 1, and he ended the day with a very clutch catch to get us to the point where we could score. So not going to shame him. Everybody has a bad day. Weather certainly didn't help. I mean, it was again cold, rainy, and snowy in Canton. So, you know,
Yeah.
not the ideal conditions, which thankfully, of course, led us to relying on the run, which paid off in spades.
Yeah, that certainly did.
And I love that Reggie got to call his own number. Like, dude, yelling in the phone. I love him mic'd up. Dude being mic'd up. I know he's a completely different person on the field than he is off the field. And I think that's the case for like a lot of people, a lot of players. Like you'll see like, people talk about how they're the nicest person off the field. Like nothing they don't do ever this or that. Like they're not violent, they're not aggressive off the field. But when they get on the field, they change, and Reggie is certainly one of those dudes. And not only was that clip worthy for sound bites for his conversation on Sunday with the upstairs with the booth, but he backed it up. He said he'd kill him, and damn it, that's what he did. And it's just interesting that something about Philly and him having his long touchdown runs. Obviously, last year,
Yeah.
first meeting with the Stars, he had his 88-yard touchdown run, which is still the modern USFL record for touchdown runs. Might still be the touchdown run record for the USFL as a whole. Not sure. I didn't actually look that up. So, but as far as as far as the Fox owned USFL, Reggie owns the longest touchdown run, and of course, he had to do it again. Didn't quite match the 88 yards that he had last year, but I mean, I'm not going to complain. He salted the game away with that touchdown run. So love it. Love that
Yeah.
consistency against the Stars. And dude, just again, another reason why he is him.
Yeah. I still remember that first rushing touchdown last year against the Stars. That put him on the map. And this one put him right back on the map, you know? And then of course, the whole funny thing of him like calling up Marty and Co. and saying like, "Hey, give me the ball, let me kill him," and then watching the rest of everything unfold, it was awesome.
Oh, and then I think he was mic'd up last year too for at least a game. And I know he was fired up as well that game too. So that is him on the field, and we just need more of him being mic'd up. Him and Warren Saba. I want to see them. I want to see them mic'd up a lot more.
Yeah.
And then I think the last thing that I want to touch on. I don't know if you had anything to add, but Speaks, dude. As much as a game that Ginda had last week, and Ginda definitely deserved the Defensive Player of the Week award, but Speaks, he had himself a game too, and he is, I think, in my opinion, the kind of early favorite for Defensive Player of the Year. Dude had that clutch forced fumble sack at the end of the game to salt the game away, or to completely just end the game last week. Absolute clutch. Absolutely. Like when we needed to play, when we needed to stop the Stars from being able to even sniff the opportunity of making a comeback because of the 4th and 12 rule. So, dude is a beast. Dude is an animal. Absolutely expect him to continue his trajectory. And I mean, obviously, way too early after 2 games to pencil him for Defensive Player of the Year. But I mean, he's got all that potential, and I would not be surprised at all to see that he gets voted that at the end of the year.
Yeah, the way he's playing, it's only up. It's only onwards and upward.
And he again just one piece of the amazing defense, and I'm sure the performance of his other teammates on the defensive side help, but dude is playing crazy in these first 2 weeks, and yeah, I see no reason why it stops. And anything else you want to add for this past week?
No, just on the whole, very good performance. Very good game from the Panthers. Stars, they played well, but Panthers played just that much better. They showed to everyone that, they are the early kings of the North.
And hopefully that continues. Like I said, we get a chance to stretch that lead, knock New Jersey down a peg. So guess we will leave last week in the past and just look forward to what we have coming up in about a couple days. But let's talk power rankings. This is
Mhm.
probably the closest that you and I have been in our power rankings. Just 2 teams swap spots in ours. So Yeah, I think we differ from what the community voted, but you and I agree Showboats are the worst team.
Yeah. Because, like, let's be real here. The Showboats had their lowest points look like a complete tire fire. Um, the only, like, they were barely able to scratch and claw their way back into the game against Philly. Because you have to remember, for the first quarter and a half, it looked like he was going to do to them what Birmingham ended up doing to them.
Absolutely.
Like the Showboats can have moments of life. They can have moments where they're decent. But oh god, most of the time, and that defense especially, the Showboats defense is so bad. It just seems like it just seems like the Showboats defense can't do anything right.
Yeah, I mean, let's put it this way: they didn't do anything on either side of the ball. They didn't stop the Stallions. They didn't score. Like at the very least, our number 7 team, in the Maulers, they have a defense. Like they have zero offense. So, but they at least have a defense. Showboats do not have anything. And I've been down on them all offseason. I've said it multiple times. They've made no offseason moves. They still have Haley as a head coach. So I'm not confident at all. I am down on the boats. And I mean, right now, looks like they have a huge ass hole in their boat. And unless they do something, it's just going to continue to sink and take on water. So yeah, they for me, number 8. And then the Maulers, of course, team with a good defense, but absolutely no production on offense. They're my number 7. I don't know if you have anything you have anything to add. I don't know if there's a whole lot more to add
No.
about the Maulers.
Yeah, very good defense. God, they don't have an offense. And they apparently just they lose their mind the millisecond they don't have momentum. Like they're not a good team.
And
They
unless they
can
do
be
something,
good. They can be
yeah,
good, but
if they
not
stick
this
with the
year.
quarterback, maybe. Yeah. I mean, if they stick with the quarterback, maybe they might show some promise. We'll see. I don't have any faith in that. And then we all agree, the community and you and I agree that the Gamblers are number 6. I had them at number or I think I had them last week. Their performance against the Breakers was not fantastic. They obviously end up losing the game, but it was the highest scoring game of the year, 38-31. So we almost got to
Yeah.
70 points on that game. The Gamblers could score. They obviously put up a hell of a lot more numbers than they did against us. So Gamblers have promise. As I've said, I'm glad that we got them out of the way this year. I think they have the potential to be actually pretty good. I'm gonna stop short of saying that it's a 3-team race in the South, but if they tweak some things, get moving, I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility.
Yeah. They're a team that they're 0-2, yes, but there's something there. I can say like there's a heartbeat, at least in Houston, that I can't really say about the Showboats or the Mauler.
No, exactly, and that is where I'll certainly agree. They have a pulse. They have a chance to be able to make a run, and if not make the playoffs, at the very least spoil someone's chances at you know. Well, no, because the showboats aren't even going to do there, so they can at least make the Breakers work for the playoffs if the Gamblers can't you know get to the playoffs themselves. Speaking of the Breakers,
Yeah.
I have them as my number 5. I'm not impressed with them. I know you have the Generals and then the Breakers, and then I have the Generals at 4, which, as we discussed a little bit before this, they're kind of really interchangeable. I'm not offended if people put the Breakers above the Generals. I don't have a whole lot of faith in either team. Uh, Yeah, the Breakers defense is pretty decent. Their offense, obviously, everybody's super high on MBT for a reason, and I don't blame them for that. But 7-point wins against the Maulers and the Gamblers don't inspire top 3 or even for me top 4 placement. Like I can't do it. I mean, I don't think the Generals deserve number 4 spot either, but the Breakers don't, at least the very least for me, don't deserve any higher than 4.
Yeah. Yeah, because the Breakers and the Generals, I think I told you again, it's splitting hairs between these two teams. They're both decent at times, but I think they're really underwhelming. And I definitely think for the Breakers fans, this weekend's going to be a bit of a rough one. And for the Generals, yeah, I think they're just a little bit worse. I think after this week, we'll definitely see who's better, depending on who played better against Birmingham. But yeah, it's just kind of I don't have any real faith in the Breakers right now. They look like a team that got lucky against bad teams, and then they just play off volume. They just have MBT throw like 40, 50 times a game, and then just hope that eventually some of those passes hit.
Which, I mean, might actually be the winning formula against the Stallions. I think part of the Generals' problem was that they don't have a passing game. So when the Stallions got moving, like how are the Generals going to catch up? So if the Breakers can't, stop the Stallions, I think they are at least so far going to be the best matchup for the Stallions to be able to generate points and go blow for blow. So I can see where there's a little more faith in the Breakers, but like you said, like we'll get to see where they stack up after tomorrow's game.
Yeah.
And then our number 3, obviously, we were not going to put the Panthers below the Stars after they just beat them by 14. So I have 3 Stars, 3 kind of comfortably so. Again, we'll see this week how they handle the Maulers and how we do against the Generals, but I think with the firepower that the Stars have and their defense is not terrible. You have Dennis, you have Stribling, like they have a defense. It's not a stout defense. It's not necessarily in the top half. They obviously have not been able to figure out their run defense. They obviously are very porous in the offensive line. So we obviously exposed their weaknesses this past week, but I still have them at 3. I don't have enough on them, I think, to drop them any further.
Yeah. The Stars, I think, still have shown that they are capable of being a really good team. I think, though, that if they struggle this week, you had to drop them down a little bit because struggling against the Showboats towards the end, and then getting kind of exposed by the Panthers, and then even if they just have the Maulers hang on to them, that's not a good look. They're a team that's good, but they're a team that can fall pretty far depending on how this week goes for them.
Yeah, I think this week is these matchups are actually really interesting, just simply for the fact that they seems to be lined up perfectly to kind of see how the power rankings are really going to shake out after this week. Again, the Generals actually any good? Are the Panthers any good? Are the Breakers any good? Are the Gamblers actually decent-ish? I think the way that the matchups work out this weekend are going to be able to kind of show us a lot. So, kind of interesting how that's played out. And then obviously, I think it goes without saying, Panthers and number 2, we're 2-0, double 2-score game or wins, double-digit wins over both our opponents the first 2 weeks. We don't have quite the same level of dominance that we've seen from the Stallions. They obviously were the defending champions last year. got to retain most of the roster. I can't unseat them, so I'm leaving Stallions at 1, and then Panthers kind of have to sit there at number 2, which is compared to last year, not really a consolation prize. Kind of, I think it's well deserved.
Yeah.
So that is it. Obviously, we kind of disagreed for the most part. I really only got the top 2 rankings with the community rankings. Match them with the Panthers and the Stallions, and then we all agreed that Gamblers are at 6. The rest of them, everybody else seems to be higher on the Breakers. I don't get it, but they're undefeated too, so I can see why they're placed at number 3. Disagree with that, obviously, as we've said. So, but again, it'll all shake out more this week. But now,
Yeah.
the time that we've all been waiting for. The week we finally get to see our Panthers play at Ford Field in Detroit in front of a home crowd, in front of you and me, General Sunday at 4 p.m. on Fox. We're playing. It's finally here.
Yeah. Yeah.
Finally here.
It feels surreal, that I'll be watching a Panthers game because I first heard about the team back when I was like 9 years old. And by that point they were just like a relic of a different time. But now that I'll actually be able to sit there, and you and I will be sitting pretty much right at the 50-yard line, to watch the Panthers, be back home. It's insane.
Yeah, I'll be a mix of in my seats and on the field. So, not sure exactly how that's going to be. I'm sure I won't want to stand for the entire time anyway. But yeah, the fact that we'll be right there in section 127, watching the game, watching the Panthers live, donning that royal plum, and those helmets will be in Detroit, like, is crazy. And crazier part is it's the first of 4 games, dude. 4 games in a row, but I'm not looking past this week. Like it, I'm so sorry. This week
Oh
has been
no.
dragging on. This week has dragged so bad. It's still. I woke up thinking that it was Saturday. Nope, still only Friday. So not happy, not thrilled about that. But we're less than 48 hours from the point, especially when we're recording. So, oh, it's almost here. It's almost here, and I can't wait.
Yeah. A moment 40 years in the making. Uh Before they come, and they're back. They're back. That it's so
Yeah.
weird to say, you know.
Yep.
They're people. Like imagine there's gonna be people down there, right, who were probably my age when they first watched Panthers games. They're now at the end of their careers. Some of them might be retired even.
Yeah. Quite the uh quite the dichotomy there. And then we get to pick up where things left off in the 80s. And of course, the Panthers played in at Silverdome, which no longer stands as a stadium. So that's sad. So this is the first game that they are playing at Ford Field at this brand, or not, obviously not now brand new, but at this venue. So it's crazy. I'm glad. I kind of like that more than if the Silver Dome, no, if the Silver Dome was still standing. I think I like this more than that, just because this is a new beginning, and then we get to be a part of like the first game at this venue. So I think that's cool. I'm loving it. I'm excited, and I still think like this game is going to answer a lot of more questions. Again, like I know last weekend answered a lot of questions with the team as far as matching up with Philly against a team that has very much playoffs in mind and has the capability of getting there. So, but what do we do against an actual defense though? Like what do we do against an
Yeah.
actual offensive line? So, there's still some questions.
And And more importantly for me, what do we do against an actual rushing attack? Like, because TJ Pledger of the Gamblers, I think, was a decent warm up for Darius Victor, but no one's going to prepare us for going up head to head with Darius Victor.
No, you can't
You know,
prepare for thick thighs. You just gotta hope that you
no,
are ready.
yeah, and especially since he is a more like a power runner as opposed to like guys like Corbin and Scott, who are more just like speed burners, like little finesse guys. Like it's a different style of play, but a upside with it though is that if we can stop the run, the gamblers can't. The gamblers, the generals can't really pass.
No, and it's funny that you misspeak there and say the gamblers because that's kind of what we're playing against, at least when Johnson is in the game. I think he's going to be more of like Kenji in the fact that he can run though, and then we'll have to worry about the run. But his passing, it's not going to inspire us. It's not going to scare us to really respect the pass too much. And we already played Kenji, so we already know kind of that a little bit. We know how to deal with that, and we handled Kenji quite well in week 1. So that I think gives us an edge there. But also the the dual QB systems. Oh my god, I hate those things so much. But except for when our opponents use them, because they suck. And when our opponents use them, brings them down a little bit. Not that I think that we need New Jersey to screw up for us to beat them, but anything anything that they can do to make our defense's job even easier, I'm all for it. Like, let us just cruise. I want to have a blast. I don't even want to think about, what we need to do to win. I just want pure dominance. And so if they want to screw around with their dual QB system with our defense the way that it is, be my guest.
Yeah. Now again, I think the more important thing is how we're going to handle them. Yeah, defensively.
Yeah,
If we can take them down, I think it'll be pretty easy going.
our front seven are going to have to be dominant again. Like they're going to have to play hard and play well like they have the last couple weeks. I think our secondary aren't going to have to. Our secondary is not going to have to worry about Prukup or Johnson being case cookus. So that threat isn't going to be as much. They still need to be on their game. Like it's not like New Jersey can't throw the ball at all, but it's not going to be as serious of a passing threat as it was last week. So think we're geared up for that. I think we are matched up well there. So I'm not too worried, but I do kind of it'll be a really good test to see what happens against an actual offensive line.
Yeah.
But so what do you think on offensive? On us when we have the ball, what are we gonna have to do?
Well, primarily on offense, right? From what I've seen of New Jersey, there's a few things. They seem to be softer on passing attacks than a lot of the other teams in the USFL. You saw it from how Birmingham was able to carve them up deep in week 1, and you saw it in a way from how Pittsburgh, who if they can do anything on offense, it's run the ball pretty decently with Madre London. They were completely shut down because they didn't have a passing attack to help back up the running game. So I think this is going to be one of those games where we're going to have to go back to relying on Josh Love a little bit more rather than Reggie Corbin and Stevie Scott. It's not to say they're going to be ineffective in a game like this. It's that the passing attacks need to be a little bit more on its A game, which I don't think is going to be that big of an issue.
No.
Like our
Yeah.
passing offense has not shown itself to be a problem or a liability. It's just that that's how it's going to have to be.
Yeah, I think we're gonna have to throw it. And if their defensive line gets any pressure, like you said, offensive line for us last year still showed a little bit of some, weakness, at least in the first half of last week's game. So we're going to need to, play well on the offensive line in the trenches. And if the defensive line for the Generals can get to us, or can get some pressure, then we'll probably have to do, some quick throws, which, I dump off to the running back. I'm not afraid of. I think our guys know how to make some moves. So as long as Marty is willing to dial up some of those plays and not be stubborn in that, no, we need the run, or no, we have to throw the deep ball, or at least 5, 10, 15 yards down the field like we've been doing all year. Like I think I think our offense can carve up their defense. I'm not too worried, but yeah, we're not gonna be able to lean back on the run game. So Josh is going to have to be able to still make really good decisions. He's going to have to make on target throws, and we're going to have to not drop the ball. Again, playing in a dome, weather will not be a factor this week. And when weather wasn't a factor in week 1, we had no problems. So I don't know why we can't see a closer to week 1 performance on the offense, but that's to be seen. Hopefully that wasn't just a one-time thing only, and this week we'll really get to prove who we are.
Yeah. It's each of these first 3 weeks have been a unique test for the Panthers, and honestly, it's been fun. The fact that so far, the 2 weeks the Panthers have come up against unique opponents with different strengths and weaknesses, and they show they can hold their own against both. And I think that we're going to continue that way, and we're going to continue uh, one of our more negative attributes, the fact that we're still winless in one-score games. But it's okay, because I'd rather be winning every game by 2 or more scores than winning every game by 1 score.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm perfectly happy with that weird statistic. So I found that funny. Just the fact that we were 2-2 last year in 2+ score games, and we are 2-0 in 2+ score games this year. Still, that 0-6 in 1-score games last year versus the 0-0 in 1-score games this year. I'm perfectly happy with us being winless if we continue this streak. Now,
Yeah.
one thing we are going to have to be better on, though, we are going to have to be better on special teams. We did take a step forward last week. We did give Kramer some better protection, and as a result of that, he was a finalist for Special Teams Player of the Week. So that goes to show you, you give your punter some time, some breathing room to be able to get a punt off safely. He's gonna be able to make the adjustments. He's gonna be able to make the kick and get us a good spot. So glad to see that. Obviously, Murphy did play a little bit better, especially in the PAT. Think though the most important thing for us, and probably maybe the thing of least worry, is that the crowd is going to be insane. And I think
Yeah.
if any game in the USFL period is going to be affected by home field advantage, honestly, I think Sunday is going to be it. Like the first game for the Panthers in the dome, which obviously is going to keep the sound inside, and it's not going to be a small crowd either. Like I think we should be expecting maybe 20K or so to match Memphis. If that's the case, then it is going to be super hostile for the Generals. The first super hostile crowd that they've been against. Granted, they've had those 2 games against the Stallions, so I get that. So they've had some dealings with hostile crowd, but by all means, I think this is going to be the biggest attendance yet for them, and the loudest, and probably I know Alabama, and I know their enthusiasm for football, but I think we can match that energy. I think we can best that energy. And I think if any time is to prove that, that is this Sunday.
Yeah. The attendance figures are already looking good. Looking like we're going to get around a quick lane bowl's worth of people there. And we might end up getting the best spring ball atmosphere outside of St. Louis this year, and that's saying something.
That's saying a
'Cause
lot because they had their pro team ripped away from them.
yeah, meanwhile ours just sucked forever.
But I think the timing is just perfect. The Lions starting to make a little bit of a resurgence. There's no other real competition in with the Red Wings or the Pistons taking away, viewership, and the Tigers certainly not. Like that'll be interesting to deal with on Sunday. Is the fact that the Tigers are playing, but they'll be done before kickoff, and or right around the time. And I mean, we're going to be the biggest draw in Detroit that on Sunday. Like the last couple home games for the Tigers have been 11K and less. We are going
Yeah,
to destroy that, and that's just awesome. The fact that we're going to have football outdrawing the Tigers. Granted, Tigers suck, but I think that's key. I think that's very important. Is that that's going to help us get that foothold in Detroit, and it's gonna be insane. I'm still so looking forward to it. I have 2 more sleeps, and I'm ready. I'm ready for it to be Sunday, dude. I'm so ready.
yeah. I'm oh gosh. Which, by the way, if you're going to the Tigers game on Sunday, feel free to get yourself a Panthers ticket too. Again, tickets are only $10, so no reason when the stadiums are literally across the street from each other. There's no reason if you're going to be at the Tigers game to not also at least for a little bit pop in to see the Panther.
Exactly. Head on over and see the Panthers. See this insane crowd. But I think I mean there's not a whole lot else to say. So all right, predictions. I will go what are you going with?
Well, obviously, I think I'm taking the Panthers here. Shock horror. Who would have guessed? But I have a little bit more confidence in the Panthers this time around compared to the last few games. I think it's going to be a 2-score affair. The Panthers are going to probably get a little bit of a scare, midway through the second quarter. Happens every game, it seems. But through the second half, much like another team that practices in Washtenaw County, they're going to be a second half team. They're going to pull away. And I'm going to give it to the Panthers 27-13.
Yeah, I'm going with a bigger score differential this week as well. Panthers are going to win pretty big by a score of 30-13.
Yeah, so it should be a good game on the whole. And hopefully, if our score holds up, it'll be a great day to be a Panthers fan.
And with that, I think we'll end it here and leave everybody with the same anticipation for Sunday's matchup as we are. As always, please follow us on all social media. We are at Panthers Shadow across all social media, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube. Also, make sure you follow me on Twitter at Cheese Soda and Jack at Panthers Claw MI. With that, we'll be back with another Panthers Victory podcast next week.